Lindsay Parker, founder of the Fish Slam Club, is also the owner of the Phoenix Lodge in Alaska, and his lodge there has inspired this presentation. The presentation will show you how we are going to carve a silver salmon inspired by the Alaska fishery. So sit back and enjoy carving a silver salmon. This particular piece of wood is over 100 years old. Most of you know me as the Fish Slam Club film editor, which I enjoy doing, and I also do a lot of artwork, painting and fish carving, and so this will be Kimball Parker teaching you how to carve a silver salmon. The term for removing a lot of wood fast is called hogging wood. We hog the wood out with a chainsaw, then we chip it out with wood chisels, and we'll hog the wood in many instances as we get the blank to a more workable size. If you'd like more information on how I do this and the wood carvings that I make, you can go to www.onewildlifeartist.com. We have a more workable size blank here. It's still very heavy and there's a lot of work ahead of us, but we're making some progress. A bandsaw would make this much easier. I do not have a bandsaw, so I use the chainsaw and chip out the little slats here with a wood chisel. But if you have a bandsaw or access to a bandsaw, it can make this process go much quicker. As you can see, I broke the tail. Juniper wood is very wonderful to work with. It's a hard wood, but it's not too hard. But one of the problems with juniper is it has a lot of cracks in it. And thank goodness for wood glue and wood putty, because we use it quite a bit. This particular portion of the tail busted off, and so we're going to put some wood glue on it and glue this back together and then tape it. Once this wood glue sets, I believe it's just an Elmer's glue, and generally you'll want it to sit for a day at least. It's very, very strong, and we had no trouble with this particular tail after this glue had set. I also dropped the fish in the process of creating it and busted it in a lot of pieces, and the tail at least, and had to glue the whole tail, but it worked well. Things are getting serious now. This thing's actually starting to look like a fish. But as you can see, there are lots of imperfections in it. The juniper has lots of knots in it from tree branches, etc. And those things are going to have to be filled in and puttied in. I'm actually drawing with a pencil the face of the fish on now, and we'll get ready to start working on the head of the fish, which is actually pretty exciting when you get to this point. I made a huge mistake here. I've done lots of fish, but I drilled through what's called the maxillary clip instead of the mouth. Oops. Yeah. Anyway, like I said, thank goodness for wood putty. I puttied up the hole in the maxillary clip and then drilled the hole in the mouth where it was supposed to be drilled. After drilling the hole in the mouth, I'll be doing some jigsaw work towards that. And I use a smaller grinder, a 4-inch power sander with 100 grit paper. Well, the rough blank is taking shape and looks pretty good. You can see some big divots there in the wood that are going to have to be filled with putty, and you can see lots of puttied areas here that are going to need to be cleaned up. The jigsaw did a nice job cutting out the rough dimensions of the mouth. However, the back side of the jaw broke, and you can see that piece to the right had to be glued back in, and it was glued in and worked fine. Now we have what's called the lateral line of the fish, which I put in with a wood burner. Every fish, salmon, has a lateral line on either side, and this thing will be covered up by paint. It won't be nearly as dramatic as it appears right now. The next thing that we need to do is we need to make fins with pins. The fins will be made from the juniper wood and will be pinned into the body of the fish with finish nails that are ground off on either end. And we have these fins. There are actually 7 fins: dorsal adipose, anal fin, 2 pectoral, and 2 pelvic fins. And so each fish has got 7 fins. And here I use a wood burner to make a pattern, and then a Dremel with a little round bit to drill out the veins. And it's quite a lengthy and laborious process, but it turns out really well. You can see this is the dorsal fin completed, unpainted obviously. And we actually have to put veins in the tail of the fish as well, and so that's done. And lots of time, lots of work to put in these veins. These are the gill veins, and they are quite technical, but they really add a dimension to the fish that you've got to have. As we go through the process, there's lots of steps, but it's fairly sequential, and you should be able to figure it out if you're going to be making a fish. We're going to assemble the fish without being painted. As you can see, some assembly is required, but here's the finished product without any paint. And we'll make a separate video just on painting fish. An airbrush is a very valuable tool, and we'll take a lot of time in another video to show you how to use an airbrush. Now we disassemble the fish, take it apart, and start painting all the parts. Each fin has been painted individually. The veins have been painted in by hand, and the fins have been airbrushed. A white primer has been put on the body of the fish, and the primer will actually fill some of the cracks and imperfections. You can see here we've sanded lightly, and after that's done you'll need to prime again. Sometimes it'll take 2 or 3 coats of primer to fill in some of these small cracks and crevices. Well, as you can see, we've broke out the airbrush and we put several different colors on the fish, and that's just the beginning, but airbrushing is actually a lot of fun. You can see here that I put a hook in the tail so that I can actually hang the fish up to paint it and put clear lacquer on it. Now this fish is going to have a pedestal mount, and I've got a pin in the body of the fish and made a pedestal out of some of the scrap wood that we cut off with the chainsaw. Put in a little JB weld and welded up the pin so that it stayed in place, and we've got a nice pedestal mount. Turned out really well. The head and tail have been finished and masked off, and scales are painted over. We have a screen mesh. We use a contact cement, and we contact cement the mesh over the fish, and then we paint over the mesh, and it leaves a fantastic scale pattern. You can see the finished head, no scales on the head, but if you look closely you can actually see the scales that were created by the mesh, and does a great job. Now the fins are to be placed and pinned. We use the wood glue, the Elmer's glue, in addition to the pins, and all of those are in place now. And it obviously is going to take a little while to dry, but after it's dried, we're going to put the final gloss of clear coat on the fish and the pedestal. You'll want to be sure and do this outside so you don't get overspray all over your house and your vehicles. It's going to take 3 or 4 coats of the clear, and I would recommend at least an hour between coats. And this is the finished product. A beautiful silver salmon, and it started off kind of rough, but it turned into something that I think anyone would be proud to put in their home. The final product here took about 80 hours. Now the reason it took so long is it's two-sided. It's a full 3D fish. A lot of times if you just do one side and you hang it on the wall, it'll take a lot less time. So here's what we started with. Pretty rough old 100-year-old piece of juniper, and here's what we ended up with. Well, thanks for watching. Go to Fish Slam Club on YouTube for lots of great videos, and www.onewildlifeartist.com for more information on my carvings. Thanks for watching.